looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. A radio broadcaster gunned down while live streaming. Juan Jumalon, a news anchor at Calamba Gold FM 94.7 in Misamis Occidental, was shot and killed while live streaming his program from his home early Sunday. A gunman entered his house with a companion and shot him once. Jumalon was pronounced dead at the hospital. The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its growth forecast for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations for 2023 and 2024. The IMF cited the global economic slowdown, rising inflation, and supply chain disruptions as factors behind the downgrade. Ishiguro Norihiko, chairman of the Japan External Trade Organization, or JETRO, says the global supply chain is undergoing dramatic change, with companies reviewing their production chains in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, tensions between the United States and China, and sustainability concerns. Timor-Leste President Jose Ramos Horta will be in the Philippines on Friday, November 10. Timor-Leste joined the 42nd ASEAN Summit as an observer. First in our news, radio broadcaster Juan Jumalon was gunned down while live streaming his program from his home in Misamis Occidental early Sunday. Jumalon, a news anchor at Calamba Gold FM 94.7, was shot once by a gunman who entered his house with a companion. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police have created a special investigation task force to spearhead the investigation. President Marcos Jr. has condemned the killing, saying that there's no place for such attacks in a democratic country. The Presidential Task Force on Media Security has also called for a special investigation, saying that they consider the incident work-related for the moment. The original live video of Jumalon's broadcast has been deleted from Facebook, but a screen-recorded video of the shooting shows the suspect grabbing Jumalon's gold necklace before leaving the crime scene. Police checkpoints have been set up around the town, and a team has been formed to track the suspects. Jumalon is the second radio commentator in Mindanao to have been killed in the middle of a broadcast. In 1985, Charlie Aberilla was shot dead inside his radio booth in Iligan City. Aberilla's case remains unsolved to this day. The Philippines remains one of the most dangerous countries for journalists, particularly for radio broadcasters. Calamba police were not aware of any previous threats against Jumalon's life. The broadcasts are also aired on the station's Facebook page, which has 2,400 followers. Thai workers who were caught up in the Hamas attack are preparing to leave Israel, attended by consulate staff at the Intercontinental Hotel in Tel Aviv. 32 Thai nationals have been killed and 19 wounded in the conflict, and the kingdom has evacuated more than 7,000 of its citizens on repatriation flights. Thailand's foreign minister said he had pressed his Iranian counterpart over the fate of 23 Thais taken hostage by Palestinian militant group Hamas in its attack on Israel. Parn Pri Baida Nukara traveled to Qatar and Egypt this week for talks on the hostages, or rather last week, and met his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian in Doha, urging him to use Tehran's links with Hamas to help secure the release of Thai nationals. About 30,000 Thais are working in Israel, mostly in the agriculture sector, according to the kingdom's labor ministry.
Our main priority is to get back as many Thais as possible who needed to be repatriated. And according to our list of 8,000, 9,000 people, we are able to repatriate most or nearly all of them back to Thailand. So I think our mission supported by the Thai government, supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the embassy themselves here, which has done a great job despite the number of personnel, number of diplomats here. They have around only 5 or 6 people. And 5 or 6 people helping to evacuate nearly 10,000 people is a really a huge task. So that's why we from Thailand are here to facilitate.
ก็มีเหตุการณ์หลายๆอย่างครับผมในแต่ละวันแล้วก็ชีวิตการทำงานทุกวันก็เจอพวกรถถังพวกอะไรพวกนี้ครับแล้วก็รู้สึกไม่สบายใจครับผมในการทำงานในแต่ละวันครับผมรู้สึกไม่ค่อยสบายใจแล้วก็ทางบ้านก็ดูข่าวทางทีวีด้วยครับก็เป็นห่วงจิตใจทางบ้านด้วยครับผมที่ตัดสินใจกลับในครั้งนี้ติดภาคเหนือติดเลบานอนครับผมก็ช่วงนี้ก็กำลังเริ่มครับผมเมื่อวานนี้ก็มีการโจมตีเข้ามาก็เรื่องเกี่ยวกับหน้าที่การงานครับผมเพราะว่าทางไทยเราก็ค่าตามค่าแรงทั่วไปครับผมกลับมาครับผมทางนายจ้างอินเตอร์วีซ่าให้ครับผมกลับมาครับเมื่อใดสงครามจบก็คือทางนายจ้างรีเคสมาอีกรอบหนึ่งครับ
Secretary of State Antony Blinken said he believed a ceasefire in Gaza would allow for Hamas to regroup and repeat an attack on Israel.
Ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just a few days ago, a senior Hamas official said that it was their intent to do October 7th again and again and again. No nation, none of us can accept that. No one would find that tolerable. And so it is important to reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself, indeed its obligation to do so, and to take necessary steps so that October 7th can never happen again.
However, he continued his call for a humanitarian pause.
Most essential thing to get by. We've worked very hard to make sure that that assistance can flow to them. But it's also one of the reasons why humanitarian pause would be so important, to make sure that we can maximize the assistance getting to the Palestinians, that we can make sure that people can move about safely.
The heads of all major UN agencies issued a rare joint statement Sunday expressing outrage at the civilian death toll in Gaza and calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas. The heads of 18 organizations, including UNICEF, the World Food Program, and the World Health Organization, described the horrific toll on both sides since the October 7 Hamas cross-border attack from Gaza into Israel, which left about 1,400 people dead, mainly civilians, according to Israeli authorities. Israel has retaliated with relentless air and artillery strikes that have killed at least 9,770 people, also mostly civilians. That is according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. Meanwhile, the UN called on Hamas to release the more than 240 hostages it took in its attack and urged both sides to respect their obligations under international law as the war rages on. In tonight's other news, the International Monetary Fund has downgraded its growth forecast for ASEAN, or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, for this year and 2024.
The economies in ASEAN are expected to rise to see growth of 4.2% in 2023 and 4.6% in 2024, a downward revision of 0.4 percentage points in 2023 and 0.3 percentage points in 2024 relative to our World Economic Outlook in April. The downgrade reflects not only weaker growth outturns, but external demand is also weakening, and more lackluster domestic demand because of waning revenge consumption and monetary policy tightening.
He also noted that GDP in the Pacific Island countries with high dependence on tourism is still more than 10% below pre-pandemic levels,
with challenges from higher fiscal deficits, elevated debt, and shrinking fiscal space.
Vasan also provided some insights on Asia's recent economic developments.
Even as pressures in the China's property sector remains unabated. I'd like to highlight that China's manufacturing PMI showed an expansion of activity in September. The year-on-year growth of retail sales has also improved, but monthly data are volatile and caution is warranted in the interpretation of short-term fluctuations. Going beyond China, what we see is continued resilience and strength and activity in the services sector in Asia, as evidenced from the PMIs.
However, she also said, Srinivasan also noted that manufacturing activities exhibit weakness across Asia. And that is due to the persistent downturn of the technology cycle and broader weakness in global demand.
In September, manufacturing activity in Asia's emerging markets, excluding China, also moved into negative territory, reflecting broader weakness in global demand.
Now, he also said that headline inflation has declined from post-pandemic peaks. But there are signs of renewed price pressures emerging more recently.
Receded and monetary policy bites, albeit with signs of renewed price pressures emerging more recently. Moreover, in a few advanced economies in Asia, core inflation remains sticky due to tight labor market and positive output gaps. Except for Japan, inflation is expected to return to within target ranges by the end of 2024. This puts Asia ahead of the rest of the world, although the risk of more persistent inflation could materialize, given recent commodity price spikes, exchange rate changes yet to be fully passed through, and tighter labor markets.
Now, Srinivasan also said that central banks in Asia should stay the course with policies to ensure that inflation is durably at target and expectations are anchored.
Financial conditions in advanced Asia have tightened as higher rates take hold. But emerging Asia has seen accommodative financial conditions. However, the recent rise in U.S. long-term yields following the September U.S. Fed meeting has exerted pressures. In the past few weeks, we have seen financial tightening across Asian markets. Long-term local currency sovereign yields, notably in some economies in Asia and Pacific, have increased substantially since the FOMC meeting in September. At the same time, Asian currencies have depreciated across the board, although to a limited extent compared to previous US dollar strengthening episodes. Financial supervisors in Asia should remain vigilant on systemic risks and calibrate macroprudential measures given the higher leverage and rates. If financial stress were to emerge, deploying liquidity and other support measures promptly while modernizing resolution frameworks would be important. Finally, to summarize, in the Asia-Pacific Regional Economic Outlook that we will publish in Singapore next week, we emphasize that the region is facing challenges from persistent medium-term output losses and China's structural slowdown, geoeconomic fragmentation, and inflation.
Myanmar's junta chief vowed to strike back after an alliance of ethnic minority groups seized towns and blocked trade routes to China in the biggest coordinated offensive against the military since it seized power in a coup. Fighting has raged for a week across a wide swathe of northern Shan state, forcing more than 23,000 people from their homes, according to the UN, in what analysts say is the most severe military challenge to the junta since it seized power in 2021. The Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, or MNDAA, the Tang National Liberation Army, or TNLA, and the Arakan Army, or AA, said they had captured dozens of outposts and 4 towns and blocked vital trade routes to China. Meanwhile, Associate Professor at the University of Hong Kong, Dr. Enze Han, says that as long as the country's military leadership maintains control of the Bamar heartland, then its control of the country should be relatively secure.
So I think basically this military offensive has been surprising, I think, for the military government. And that's why currently I think there is a process of recouping, of pulling troops from other parts of Myanmar for resupply in the northern part of Shan state. But then again, those armies, their ultimate goal is to maintain their autonomy in a particular location they consider belongs to them, right? Now, I don't think any of those groups that they have capacity to declare independence, right? But then, so in some ways, periodically the military does, lose out against variety ethnic armed groups, in Karen state, in Kachin state, or in Shan state. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the military is losing out on a national level. right? So in some ways, as long as they maintain control of the Burma heartland, then its control of the country should be relatively secure. So what that means, and I think at least currently means the bilateral trade between, at least bilateral border trade between China and Myanmar has probably come to a stop, right? And basically waiting for the situation to improve, and then we'll see how things will go. I mean, if Myanmar does not have domestic instability, then what's the point of talking about Belt and Road? Right? I mean, you cannot have sort of stable economic relations or investment in infrastructure or in many sort of, sectors of the economy if you don't have domestic stability, right? So
China called for an immediate ceasefire in Shan State, home to a planned $1 billion rail link in its Belt and Road infrastructure project.
中方高度关注缅北冲突态势，敦促各方立即停火止战，坚持通过对话协商，以和平方式解决分歧，避免事态升级，并采取切实有效措施，确保中缅边境安全稳定。
Myanmar's borderlands are home to more than a dozen ethnic armed groups, some of which have fought the military for decades over autonomy and control of lucrative resources. Violence between vocational students in Thailand is a growing problem. Students regularly meet up to clash with guns, knives, or their bare hands, fueled by a culture of macho pride and long-standing rivalries between different colleges. Pei, a vocational student, was shot by a student from a rival college simply for wearing his uniform. He survived, but carries a deep scar as a permanent reminder of the attack.
ก็แบบว่ามันเริ่มหนักขึ้นเรื่อยๆเริ่มมีการดักกันผมก็ดักเขาก็ดักผมแต่ก็ดักต่อยกันมั่งอะไรกันมั่งแต่พอมาช่วงหลังๆกับตอนที่ใกล้จบปีหนึ่งกันแล้วเขามาดักเลือกที่จะดักยิงแหละเพราะเหมือนว่าเขาอาจจะโดนรุ่นพี่บีบมาหรือยังไงอันนี้ผมก็ไม่เข้าใจนะ
Ao, a 19-year-old studying to be a car mechanic, was involved in a gun battle at a petrol station that left one student dead and 2 others wounded. He was acquitted of all charges as prosecutors decided that he and his friends acted in self-defense. Students say that the violence is about defending their honor and proving that they are better than their rivals.
ส่วนหนึ่งคือเขารู้นะว่าเขามีสิทธิ์เขารู้ว่าเขามีปากเสียงนะแต่ทีนี้ไปพูดที่ไหนอะมันไม่มีก็เลยมาลงแบบนี้เป็นการแบบเหมือนว่าเป็นการแสดงออกอย่างหนึ่งอะเพราะมัน
However, experts say that the root cause of the violence is inequality and alienation. Vocational students are often looked down upon by society and the state, and they may feel neglected and disrespected. Experts say that more needs to be done to address the root causes of the violence, such as inequality and alienation. They also say that vocational schools need to do more to promote peace and understanding between students.
ก็คือกระทำเพราะว่าสิ่งเหล่านี้มันเป็นสิ่งที่ทำแล้วมันมีความหมายต่อเขาแล้วก็มีความหมายต่อคนอื่นนะครับเพราะงั้นมันก็เลยกลับมาสู่โจทย์ที่ว่าแล้วเราได้ชวนให้เขากระทำอะไรที่มันมีความหมายต่อเขาหรือเปล่าถ้าเรามีพื้นที่จำกัดและเขาก็ดูเหมือนไม่ค่อยมีความหมายในสายตาของคนส่วนใหญ่หรือคนที่เป็นผู้ใหญ่นะครับเขาก็จะพยายามหาความหมายในรูปแบบของเขาเองและนี่ก็คือหนึ่งใน
Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte visited Vietnam this week to boost bilateral ties, especially in the fields of high technology and digital transformation. Mr. Rutte rode bicycles with his Vietnamese counterpart Pham Minh Chinh and met with Dutch semiconductor companies and suppliers who are planning manufacturing investments in Vietnam. The investments are a sign that the Netherlands is reducing its reliance on China as a hub for exports amid increasing trade tensions. Dutch semiconductor equipment maker BE Semiconductor Industries has already received approval to make an initial investment of $5 million to rent a factory in Vietnam, with plans to build its own factory within the next 4 years. Rutte said he is sure other Dutch chip companies and suppliers will follow suit. The Japanese business leader Ishiguro Norihiko says the global supply chain is undergoing dramatic change, with companies reviewing their production chains in light of the COVID pandemic, tensions between the U.S. and China, and sustainability concerns.
Comparing the first half of the 2023 with the same period 2 years ago, we can see relatively high growth in trade within the USMCA region, between the US and the EU, and between the China and ASEAN. In contrast, trade growth between China and the US and China and Japan are declining. It seems a trend toward stronger trade relations among the like-minded and the neighboring countries is beginning to emerge. At the same time, they are changing their stance towards business with China. Only 33.4% of the Japanese companies in China said that they will expand business in the next 1 to 2 years. This is a record low since the survey began in 2007.
Ishiguro, who is the chairman of the Japan External Trade Organization, or JETRO, says he sees three things governments in the Indo-Pacific region, including the U.S. and Japan, can do to improve supply chain resilience.
The environment surrounding supply chain in the Indo-Pacific is becoming increasingly uncertain and complex. Here, I would like to bring up 3 points that I think should be carried out by the government in the region, including the United States and Japan. The first is providing support so that reliable supply chains can be established. I believe that it is important to make an international framework that reduces dependence on countries of the concern for the critical minerals, semiconductors, and other important commodities, and to share information during the emergencies. The second is transparent export control based on a common principle and rules. The small yard and high fence policy, for instance, through the global supply chain, parts, raw materials, and products cross borders every day. Different rules for each country can be a big burden for companies. And the third is maintaining free and fair economic order based on rules. It appears some countries are taking advantage of the economic dependence to engage in acts of the economic coercion, such as banning exports or import of the certain items. Protectionism is also a growing concern. Recently, China banned imports of the seafood from Japan without scientific grounds.
Ishiguro says the Indo-Pacific region has driven global growth through the free trade order.
A rules-based economic order is essential for this continue. To this end, economic frameworks and FTAs such as IPEF, which address 21st century concerns, and CPTPP, to which the UK has recently agreed to join, and also RCEP are laying the groundwork for rules in the region. We hope that the US will return to the CPTPP. This is the earnest wish of Japan. This was a message consistently delivered by my predecessors at this conference. It would give me a great joy to be able to see it happen during my tenure.
Ishiguro says the U.S.-Japan partnership is more important than ever in the face of an increasingly uncertain global economy.
There is a great potential for Japanese-U.S. collaboration in areas such as the research and development of the critical commodities, innovation, and the clean economy.
Now, he concludes by saying that it's vital to restore the function of the World Trade Organization.
And on the top of this, I believe it's vital to restore the function of the WTO as a rule-making and a rule-keeping body. I believe that our two countries should work together to provide leadership for sustainable growth in the Indo-Pacific region.
And finally, in our news, Pikachu mascots kicked off the festive season in Bangkok, Thailand. 32 Pikachu mascots from Japan's popular Pokemon franchise danced in front of hundreds of fans outside the Central World Shopping Mall. The event was organized by the Central Group, a major Thai retail conglomerate. The Pikachu-themed campaign will run until the beginning of January and will feature a variety of activities including meet and greets with Pikachu, Pokemon-themed merchandise, and special promotions. This is the first time that such a large-scale Pikachu event has been held in Thailand. It's expected to attract thousands of visitors and generate a significant amount of revenue for the local economy. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.